What's going on? This is A.R. Shaw, lifestyle editor of Rolling Out TV. Have three special guests, three
Yeah.
What's going
freedom
on?
freedom fighters, who call that people who are pretty much fighting for our rights. They're fighting for our freedoms on a day-to-day basis. They're out in the field. They're doing the work that needs to be done, and people are going to get a chance to see the work that you guys are doing on a new BET special. First, have you guys introduce yourselves, introduce the show, and we're going to get a little bit more information about what you guys are doing to kind of bring light to some of the issues that's happening around America.
My name is Yanaja Lone Wolf. I'm a national community organizer and an activist.
I'm attorney Gerald Griggs, vice president of the NAACP here in Atlanta and vice president of the state chapter of the NAACP.
My name is Char Bates. I'm a radio and TV personality as well as social justice journalist and community advocate with My Vote is Hip Hop.
Okay, so let's get a little bit into the show. Show that's coming out on BET. Can you guys announce the title and when people can expect it?
Yeah, so BET has greenlit a docu-series called Copwatch America. It premieres October the 23rd at 11 Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock Pacific time, and we are all featured in the docu-series as we talk about the cases here in Atlanta that have been underserved, that being the case of Jimmy Atchison, Oscar Kane, Jamarian Robinson, Nicholas Thomas, Veltavius Griggs, and a host of others, to make sure people understand that there's a police brutality problem here in Atlanta and there's a need for police accountability.
A lot of times when people see Atlanta and they say the things that are happening in Ferguson, the things that we see are happening in Baltimore, in Dallas and Fort Worth, that can't happen in Atlanta. But there are instances where there has been brutality and death. Can we kind of shed light on that, because a lot of the things that's happening in Atlanta, they're not getting the national attention
Nope.
that's getting it in Baltimore or in Fort Worth, in Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas. So we can explain what's happening in Atlanta. That's some of the cases that aren't really getting the national attention.
You know, it's crazy being a national community organizer. I was in Ferguson, I was in Baltimore, and I moved here in 2014. And out of all of the places I lived, just in 2019 alone, it's been over 70 police-involved killings, and that's horrific. That is a problem, and then that's the reason why Copwatch America, for a platform like this, to be able to give light to what's happening. You know, you have Jimmy Atchison, who was just in a closet, unarmed, and gets murdered. You know, you have cases like Jamarian Robinson, just watching television and in his house and getting shot 76 times here in the city of Atlanta. You know, you have cases like Oscar Kane, who was an activist with us, and he gets shot in the back and he was unarmed. You know, and so these type of situations, it's horrific, and we have to be able to bring awareness and out there and bring outrage upon it. And in a city that has so many celebrities, media platforms, everyone should be knowing what's happening in Atlanta, because of the fact that this is what they call the Black Hollywood, you know. But it's people like us and other frontliners and activists and organizations that we are working whatever we can to be able to make sure that people know. And it gets to a point where I think that here in a city that is like Chocolate City, of predominantly Black, you know, really have to sit back and say, do our lives really matter, with over 70 police involved killings just in 2019? You know, do our lives as Black and brown people really matter? You know, and that's a question I believe that the citizens of Atlanta really need to begin to ask themselves, and they should be outraged at these numbers.
I want to go. I'm gonna get to you, but I want to go from a legal standpoint. I want to jump to the case of, I think the guy's name is Anthony Hill.
Yes.
It was happening in DeKalb County.
Yes.
The officer was recently. He wasn't acquitted. He was acquitted of the murder, but he's convicted on, I think, the aggravated assault charge.
Yeah.
So you can explain that case.
On Monday, there was a verdict handed down in the case of State of Georgia versus Robert Olson. Robert Olson was a former DeKalb County police officer who murdered Anthony Hill in 2015. And it took from 2015 to 2019 for this case to come to trial. The case lasted 12 days. The jury deliberated for 6 days. All 12 days, activists were there making sure that the family's voice was elevated. And on Monday, the verdict was handed down. He was found not guilty of the 2 counts of felony murder, but he was convicted of 4 counts, aggravated assault, 2 violations of oath of office, and 1 count of false statements. So he's now facing 35 years in prison. And so what we want to do is, a lot of us have been on the front lines since the beginning of this case with other activists. We want to make sure this family is supported and that the people understand that what happened in Fort Worth and what happened in Dallas are happening here in Atlanta. And this is an opportunity for them to show up on November the 1st at 9 a.m. inside the courtroom, outside the courtroom, in a respectful, peaceful, nonviolent way, but to show the judge and to show the community that we support our Air Force veteran who is in mental health distress, believing that the police would help him. And so that was actually Anthony's last words. They told him the police were coming. He had already stripped down naked. He said, good, because the police officers are my friends. They will help me. But unfortunately, instead of helping him, Robert Olson shot him twice, killing him instantly. And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons for the show, because without the work of activists who have been on the ground since the very beginning, Us Protecting Us, Black Lives Matter, and so many others that have been on the front lines of this, we wouldn't have known the name Anthony Hill. And then I thank individuals like Sean King, who's helped elevate this case. But we as citizens of Atlanta need to understand that it's just like Baltimore. It's just like Ferguson. It's just that some people in the media here don't want to report on these cases, but it's still happening. Like she said, there are currently 70 cases of police-involved shooting, 26 open cases in the city of Atlanta that are being investigated by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I mean, when we talk about Oscar Kane, we talk about Jimmy Atchison, we talk about DeAndre Phillips and Deatrick Griffin. You know, these are names that a lot of people don't know, but hopefully after this docu-series, they will know those names, particularly the names of the individuals that were killed by Atlanta police.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of piggyback up from what he was saying, what will this show? How will this show? Do you think how will it change the narrative? Because right now it's like from social media. We see it on social media, right? But I don't know if there's ever been like a visual, scene in real world. We haven't seen this from a visual standpoint. If you can kind of talk about that.
It's going to change the narrative dramatically, and it's interesting that you asked me that question because I'm one of the media people that actually go out and interview the families to make sure that we're telling the narrative from a different standpoint. One of the recent cases that we were working on, Veltavius Griggs, literally just got profiled, and the officer didn't like whatever he said to him and turns around and shoots him, and then pretty much we know what happened, shot himself, and then you got a gun laying on your chest, but they left his body out there for hours while the police was rushed to the emergency room. Veltavius Griggs ended up dying, but every single article out of 31 articles, not one article gave any type of update on the victim, told anything from their real perspective. It was all updates on the police officer, when he got to the hospital, what time, how he doing. And, Malcolm X said a long time ago that he who controls the media controls the narrative. And when they put these cases out there and they make everyday people look like criminals for something that they did one time at band camp, it puts people in a different light to look at them as a criminal who, may have deserved what he got. Well, a big part of our job and how this show is going to change the narrative is that now the people that are frontline actually have a voice on a bigger platform. We've never been able to talk about these cases openly without them being censored, monitored, and, chopped up and screwed by the time they reach the televisions, and it's so many different things that's being covered up, even down to the amount of crimes in certain neighborhoods and why, property taxes are different and why certain neighborhoods get nicer stuff. The same crimes that's happening in Bankhead is happening in Buckhead, but they are not reporting them as much because they know that they don't want to let the truth out. Well, now we get a chance to tell the truth. Now we get a chance to tell the stories from the narrative of the community, from the perspective of hip hop, and from the view of the frontliners.
Yeah.
I know the focus is on Atlanta, but I have to speak about some of the national problems that's happening. That's getting a lot of headlines these days. Of course, Texas. What's happening in Texas? I want to first speak about the John case, Botham John and Amber Geiger. We could talk about that as far as go back to you from a legal standpoint. Let's go into the courtroom as far as the verdict, the 10 years. What do you think should have been done from the verdict standpoint? Well, the sentencing standpoint. What do you think should have been done from a sentencing standpoint? And second question is the judge's actions during that trial.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
First and foremost, my heart goes out to the Jean family.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for the work of lawyers like Benjamin Crump and Lee Merritt, and of course Sean King for elevating the case. So many mistakes were made in this particular case. I'm happy the fact that she was convicted of murder, because it was clearly murder. I believe the judge made a big error in allowing in the Castle Doctrine defense. That could have thrown the case off. And then, for the actual sentence, I'm sorry, when you get convicted of murder, there's only one sentence, and that's life. So I know that, there's places for forgiveness, but I was told a long time ago by a judge, when I asked for mercy, he said it's a court of law and justice, not mercy. So there are ramifications for people's actions. Yes, they can change, and that's between them and God. But when we're dealing with the law, if Pookie had shot Botham Jean, Pookie would have got a life sentence. So if the former police officer shot Botham Jean and it wasn't justified, then she should have got a life sentence. And then for the judge to hug that individual, I've been practicing law 15 years. I've never seen a convicted murderer be hugged by a judge, period. So it's a travesty what's happening in Texas, but I want people to focus that it's happening around the country. And so, my thoughts are, I'm glad that there was a conviction for murder. I believe that's the first conviction of a white female police officer in the history of this country for murder. But the sentence did not reflect the crime. Secondly, the actions of the judge need to be dealt with swiftly. I've seen her on a media run trying to explain her actions. You're supposed to be a fair and unbiased arbiter of justice. You cannot move from that role. Maybe later on in a private setting when you go visit her at the jail, if that's allowable, you could have given her a Bible and hugged all you wanted, but not on national TV, not in a courtroom, and not with the situation where a majority of the community was very upset about what happened to Mr. Botham Jean when he was merely in his house eating ice cream and he was murdered. So, I mean, we gotta deal with the issues in this criminal justice system. It needs to apply equally to all individuals. And that's why I love that you have now frontliners who are attorneys, because we have to have the professionals step up. We have to change laws. We have to litigate. We have to educate. We have to litigate. And then we have to legislate to end this problem.
Okay. Do you guys want to add your thoughts on those cases?
Yeah. So in regards to right now, October 28th is the National Day of Outrage. Until Freedom is an organization that Tamika Mallory, my son, Arc for Justice, Kirsten Joy, it's just basically a whole squad of people that have just started a new organization called Until Freedom. And so as of yesterday, they have launched, and we are teaming up with them to have multiple cities do a day of outrage for the sister that was just murdered in Fort Worth, Texas.
Miss Jefferson.
Miss Jefferson.
I can't pronounce her first name.
Tatiana Jefferson.
Yes.
And one thing that Tamika Mallory said yesterday on the conference call, when she said, who's going to show up for Black women but us? We have to, and we saw that around the time of Shakisha Clemens when we was doing the boycott for the Waffle House, and we saw that people are still at the Waffle House. Unfortunately, when we saw that Shakisha Clemens was sexually assaulted by 2 white police officers, that wasn't enough outrage, and now there is a young 28-year-old woman that was shot just by playing video games in her living room in her own house, you know, by a police officer. So there should be an outrage. And if you're not outraged, then there's a problem. So October 28th, all across this nation, including Atlanta, Georgia, we are going to do actions. And, you know, continue to follow us on social media. We'll be blasting that out if you want to be involved. But this is an opportunity to begin to bring empowerment and to protect our Black women, and also to uplift our Black women. Our Black women are not uplifted. You know, we see that in music videos. We see, and then we're seeing that right now with in regards to an officer could just derobe and sexually assault a Black woman and then murder her. And then, you know, and so you should be outraged. So in regards to the cases, you know, Atlanta, we are piggybacking and being in solidarity with these cases in Texas. And that's something that I always love about Atlanta. We do piggyback and support, whether it's Alton Sterling and shutting down freeways, whether it's Mike Brown and shutting down the malls over at Lenox. You know, so we're doing it again, October 28th.
You want to add anything, particularly Tatiana, her case? Do you want to add anything about that?
Oh, man. Just the fact that Botham Jean's body is not even, you know, good and cold in the ground yet. The fact that Botham Jean's foundation donated to the funeral costs for Tatiana Jefferson, that right there, you know, if people are not paying attention to the proximity of these cases now and the regularity that it has turned into, I don't know what to say to you. And for anybody to think that they're untouchable, your people ain't untouchable, and your people's people is not untouchable. So don't think that it can't happen to you, you know? And I think that that's one of the biggest problems, is that people don't take offense to what's going on until it touches close to home, when we need y'all to understand that it been home, it's now in your house, and you don't know what's going to happen. So please, please, please think twice before you call the police on another melanated person. That's if it's any way that y'all can resolve that, if it's any way that you have anybody else. And what you also need to pay attention to is that with the Tatiana Jefferson, they didn't even call 911. They called a non-lethal hotline that was supposed to be helping, and they called the police.
A well-being check.
A well-being check. How did a welfare check turn into this? So please, please, please reach out to your local activists, reach out to the local organizations in your area, and just look at some different solutions. I mean, we're working on a huge solution with My Vote is Hip Hop in a way to help people. That's FUBU, you know what I'm saying, for us, by us. But for real, like just please, please, please be careful of what you're escalating, and make sure that it's actually worth it, and try to be an adult. And you know what I'm saying, like, if we start treating everybody that looks like us or even close to it like our brothers and sisters with the same respect that we do when we go into these professional places around other people, I think that right there would change the narrative. So just be careful and stay awakened, because I need you to be more than woke.
I want to get back to you to stay on the Tatiana case.
Okay.
I think yesterday they came out with police said that she may have had a gun.
Oh, the 8-year-old nephew.
Yeah. So I want, from a legal standpoint, because Texas is an open carry state, and you have the right to have firearms.
Yes.
Especially in your home. Can you talk about that? It seems like they're trying to shift the narrative. But from a legal standpoint, even if she did have a gun, was she justified to have that gun, that firearm, if you can speak on that?
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. I mean, we just learned, and this is the terrible yet wonderful yet terrible thing that we're learning. In real time, people are being educated on the law. Yeah. And we saw the Castle Doctrine misapplied in Amber Geiger's case, which is in Texas. You know, Dallas is right next to Fort Worth. So for them to say through the 8-year-old that she had a gun and the gun was pointed at the window, she's in her house, so she's afforded the castle doctrine because the police officer never announced himself. So for them to even put that out shows they're trying to shift the narrative. But legally, she has the right to defend herself and her home, and the castle doctrine says she does not have to retreat. So I don't know why they would even use that narrative except for to victimize the victim.
And wasn't the gun in a different room? So they said the gun wasn't even in the same room as the living room, so it would be invalid anyway for them to even.
Why would they even coerce the 8-year-old?
I don't think nobody coerced him. I think that they're just saying that because it's easy to say that an 8-year-old says something random and then squish up his story,
right?
Versus saying that an adult says, because ain't no adult gonna like nah. It's easy to switch up a story.
He was the witness.
Here's the thing.
Come on, man.
And I completely agree that we have to protect our women and we have to call it what it is. These are modern day lynchings.
Yeah.
And we have to be awoke, as my sister just said.
Awakened.
Many individuals are still asleep, believing this can't happen to you. But if you're an innocent individual who's merely playing a video game at 2:30 in the morning with your nephew who's almost like your son, and now they're using your nephew who's almost like your son against you, it should make people even more curious as to why, if this was in fact true, they would charge the officer with murder within 72 hours. We have to apply sustained pressure. That's why my hat is off to the people in Dallas and Fort Worth for applying sustained pressure. My hat's off to the clergy members who finally came off the sideline and said something. But my question is, where are the mega pastors saying something? In Dallas, isn't there a mega church in Dallas?
There's a lot of mega churches.
But there's one in particular
right.
that has a very big pastor. Where is he on this issue? Where are the former leaders, the civil rights leaders that need to come forward? It's time. This is our time. These are modern day lynchings, and it's time to come off the sideline. Because if they're willing to kill women and children, who's next? This is not the first woman that's been killed in Texas. Remember Sandra Bland?
Yeah.
Was not Pamela Turner in Texas?
Yeah.
We need to have a real conversation about these cases, and we need to make sure that the legal professionals, because there are more than just 3 or 4 lawyers out here, specifically 3 or 4 African-American lawyers. We need legions of lawyers.
Yes.
So the National Bar Association needs to get involved. The specific black bar associations in that town need to get involved, because we have to make sure that if the system is working ineffectively, we need to change the system. We need to change the laws. We need to change the application of the laws, and we need to make sure that law enforcement is held accountable. So I'm glad that this police officer was terminated and charged in 72 hours, but that needs to be the rule. And we need the implementation of Obama's 21st Century Policing Initiative, which is a solution. Activists, professionals, and law enforcement got together after Mike Brown in May of 2015 and issued a report. It's the solution. I've been saying this since 2015. 92 recommendations, 6 pillars. For police officers to continue to say, we don't know what the issue is, we don't know how to solve it, that's a lie. Go get the Obama 21st Century Policing Initiative. It's on the Department of Justice website. Implement it in your town. If you're an activist, demand that your city council implement it. If you're a township or a county, demand the township or the county implement it. It's time for change.
It is. So before I wrap up, I want to give you guys final words and just what more can we expect from this show when it comes out. Start off.
So October 23rd, Copwatch America on BET every Wednesday. The reason why I signed up for this show is because of the fact that I wanted to, I'm Native American and Black. Native Americans are murdered at a higher rate than any other race. Not only, and being Black as well, I wanted to make sure that not only I'm screaming Black Lives Matter, but also Native Lives Matter. 4 of my cousins been murdered by police in the last 5 years. About 5 of my cousins been murdered by police, and about 5 of my friends been murdered by police in my lifespan thus far, unfortunately. So not only am I an activist, but I'm also a family member of stolen lives. And so I'm excited about this opportunity, and it took me a minute to even say yes because of the fact that, you know, we didn't want it to be some reality show, some Love and Revolution, you know what I'm saying? Like we wanted to make sure that I always say, and on the series, they're probably, you know, put it in there a whole bunch of times, but I always say there's different positions in Revolution. You have a beautiful community advocate, media personality. You have an attorney. Then for me, you have a national organizer. You have those that are rebels, and you have those that are actually cop watchers in New York City. So they're not only showing us in Atlanta, but they're also showing another group of activists in New York City to get different perspectives. And then I believe that everyone that's watching this show and this series will, you know, a lot of me and Shar and even Griggs, like we're parents. I'm a single mother. I have 2 sons. And a lot of times, a lot of people are always wondering, like, how do we do this? We are just regular people that was just,
no sleep gang for real,
right? And just and we had our ticking points in our lifespan that we was like, we have to do something. And so I'm hoping that the people that's watching this show is like, man, if that regular person can do something, then I could do something. And that's what we need. We need help. We need the people, the viewers that is watching this and saying, I want to activate in my community. And an activist is nothing if they're not activating something, you know, and more than activating their social media. They got to be able to activate in their community. So I'm hoping that you know, that a lot of people get that from this series every Wednesday. And I'm excited, Copwatch America, and I feel that it's going to be a series that is going to really go into our lives, our personal lives, but also most importantly into the lives of so many families that never got a hashtag.
And so, you know, the reason why I got involved in it was I want to provide solution and hope. So many are despaired by the viral images of women being abused by police, by black and brown individuals, men being abused by police. And so I wanted to provide that legal perspective, but also boots on the ground. Because like you said, but like she just said before, in order to be an activist, you just got to get active. And it's everyday people that are taking time away from their jobs and their families to make sure that the next generation is better than ours, because you can see in real time us going backwards. And so I hear people complaining, but I don't see a lot of people doing. And so we want to provide a vehicle from which you can learn how to do so that we can activate across this nation so we can end this scourge. I'm tired of people making excuses saying, oh, it's always been like this, so we just need to deal with it. No, we didn't. Our ancestors didn't deal with that. We didn't deal with that under Jim Crow. We didn't deal with that under slavery. We didn't deal with that in the civil rights movement, and we're not dealing with that in the social justice movement. So what I'm asking is for people to come off of their phones, come off of their couches, and be involved. It's really simple. All you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. You know, when I got started in '99 and we got tired of seeing the Confederate flag flying over Emory University, I had no idea how we were going to take that flag down. But we organized and gave a list of demands to the administration, and next thing you know, the flag was down. And I was like, oh, that's what being an activist is all about?
I could change something?
We can change some things, 5 or 6 or 20 people.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just that simple. And so what I want people to get out of this series is this. We decided to put ourselves out there on the line, to show our lives, to show how movement works from the inside, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, but to show we're moving forward. You're going to see resolution in cases from beginning to end, so that people say, well, I've never seen a cop convicted of murder. Well, you've seen it now. I've never seen a cop arrested and charged. You've seen it now. Stop making excuses. If Dr. King made excuses, Jim Crow would still be around. And so we need to stop making the excuses and become involved. It's really simple. Make sure you watch the show. It comes on October the 23rd at 11 o'clock. Follow the hashtag Copwatch America. And then after the 10th episode finishes and concludes, get involved. Get connected to an organization. Get connected to an activist. Become an activist. Get connected to professionals that can help solve this problem. And let's put some pressure on our elected officials.
That's right.
I mean, they pretty much touched on a lot, but if I was to say anything, I just want to let y'all know that what she said about it being different positions in the movement is real. You know, my activism doesn't look like their activism all the time. You know, sometimes they teach me new things about activism. Sometimes I teach them new things. You don't gotta be. It's no criteria. It's no criteria to standing up. You know what I mean? Like, some of us use our social media. Some people cop watch. Gerald does it legally. Yanaj Jahad, you know, has her resources nationally, but it's different ways. You know, like I use my broadcast and media background with different videos and different things. But even if you're out in the front line, even if you just sharing a post, or if you see something going on, this is another thing. If y'all see somebody pulled over, especially if they by themselves, they young, old, I don't care. If they are by themselves and they're melanated, if you have the time, please pull over.
Right.
Or even just look, man, just give them the signal like you good, you know what I'm saying? To give something, because you may just be saving their life.
Yep.
So, you know, just get involved where you can, you know what I mean? And do something, because even if, you know, even with us, we're not always able to, you know, make it to the different marches or the courtrooms and stuff, but we're still sharing the information. We're still, you know, connecting resource and different things. Just do something, because what we don't want to happen is you guys to ignore what's going on and then have to call those same people you ignored.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So definitely, look, I'm going to just go ahead and keep it real. They was trying to, you know what I'm saying, sugarcoat it. It's about, listen, it's drama and everything. You know what I'm saying? This is our real lives. You know, you ain't never seen no team of people who everybody get along. You know what I'm saying? So, but this is real. But guess what? When it's time to fight justice and fight against 12, we all right there. You know what I mean? But you guys are really getting a glimpse into history. You know what I mean? Because we're responsible for a lot more than what IG says. Yeah. So just stay tuned in. October 23rd, every Wednesday from there on out. Look, we right after the Tyler Perry shows. 11 p.m. Wednesday nights. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
After
Tune
Sisters.
in. Right.
And the Oval.
And the Oval with Tyler Perry. Also, too, my condolences go out to the family of Representative Elijah Cummings. Being a former Baltimorean, you know, he's just amazing person, amazing frontline. You know, we and you are standing
on the shoulders
of Elijah Cummings, of so many more, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Elijah Muhammad, you know, Marcus Garvey, the list goes on and on and on and on. So yes, Fannie Lou. So we cannot just sit back and disrespect their legacy, especially today, and especially what Representative Elijah Cummings, what he represented. We cannot disrespect his legacy by not doing nothing. Do something. Copwatch America, October 23rd. Queen Yanaj Jahad, Gerald Griggs, Shar Bates.
And let me just say one last thing. Let me say one last thing.
Bunch of church fingers up here, ain't
With regard to Representative Cummings, he was a lion of a man in the movement.
Yes.
You guys have to understand something. The civil rights movement lions are starting to fade away. Yeah. What are you going to say to your children when these lions are gone if we're not replacing them? It's time to replace them. Less talk, more action, in the spirit of Representative Cummings, in the spirit of Dr. King, in the spirit of Ella Baker, in the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer, in the spirit of Roy Wilkins, in the spirit of Malcolm X, in the spirit of all of these leaders that have come before us. It's our time. So we can either sit back and watch the modern day lynchings, or we can stop them. Copwatch America,
October 23rd.
Every Wednesday. 11 o'clock.
For
every
10